Welcome back to Restless. I'm Father Joseph Gill, priest of the Diocese of Bridgeport, and you've joined myself and Lauren, because obviously you've joined myself, because I'm the one talking right now, and Lauren, as we restlessly seek the face of Christ in today's world. And you may have heard our earlier episode on young adult ministry, which is, a young adult is a very unique demographic with unique challenges, generally stretching, most people would say like after college, right?
Yeah.
Kind of young adults, so like 22 to 35, 39.
I know, yeah.
46, I don't know. I don't know. However old, but definitely unique challenges, right? Because you got jobs, you got dating, you've got discerning your vocation, trying to find a community, perhaps in a city that's not your own.
Mm-hmm.
And so the gospel needs to be tailored to those unique situations and challenges. But I think other demographics have unique challenges as well. Like we just started recently, I think our second, maybe third, probably second year doing a seniors group at my parish. So for those of 65 and older generation, which is also very interesting because, we're talking about them. How do you evangelize when you're that age? How can you spiritually grow when you're retired? Like what's, lots of different challenges. But one of the demographics that you and I have worked on at great length is youth ministry. So if you don't know, Lauren works at a Catholic school. And even though she does a lot of, her official title is Director of Operations,
Mm-hmm.
there are times when she's comforting kids who are going through tough times that she's just she's the gym teacher, so she sees the kids in their behavioral challenges.
Mm-hmm.
But also she also directs the Stanford Catholic Young Youth Group.
I do.
Yeah, and you've been doing that for your third year?
3 years.
3 years, yeah. And so I've been doing youth ministry for 20 plus years, something like that. So
you're the expert.
Yeah, but we
You're so good at it.
We've all have our our unique way of doing it, unique gifts that we bring. So what are some of the challenges that you've found, perhaps, because you've worked probably a lot more with young adults in bringing them the gospel than youth. So what are some of the unique challenges that some of the youth are facing in their high school, middle school days?
Well, it can be hard to get kids that don't already know each other to interact.
Which is similar to young adult ministry.
Yeah, that's true. But, at that point, you'd hope you'd have confidence.
And at least
right?
with young adults, they're there because they want to be there.
True.
With youth, it's sometimes parents dragging them.
Exactly. They may not want to be there. They could be so shy that they really cannot talk to anyone.
Yeah.
Right? A poor attitude, right? I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Defiance. I find that quite a bit.
Do you really in the youth group? Or school? Because school is understandable.
I know
right?
there's a defiant attitude that can come into youth group. It's more definitely in the PE class,
Sure.
Yeah. But that's something I think that's part of that age. And so what I'll often see is like if I, for whatever reason, want to play a particular game or do a particular thing, even if they're telling me no, I know they're going to enjoy it, right? So trying to persist and then see them have fun.
Yeah.
That's always satisfying.
Yeah, and that's, I think, one of the blessings is that there's a more openness there, right? You're not going to find a young adult coming to a swing dance if they know they hate swing dancing.
Or unless they have courage.
Or unless they have courage
try something new.
Or desperate.
But yeah, no, I think with kids, certainly children, I think in one sense are easier. So for me, maybe that's like 7, because like 4, 5, 6, that's still very little. But like 7 to 11, they're very eager. They're excited. There's like this excitement and joy if you bring them in to do something. But then 7th, through high school age,
mm-hmm.
They can be more, I don't want to do that. I'm too cool for that. Even like being a camp counselor,
Oh, when you were camp counselor,
Yeah.
you found that was a challenge of that age group?
Well, I remember too, like one thing I did was I volunteered at a camp in Israel called Ultimate Peace. And we were trained beforehand, like they even reenacted what the kids are like I don't want to do that. Like a grumpy teenager, but how you have to, in their sense, overdo it with like spirit and fun and silliness, and they'll break down eventually. Like they give into you, and then they're part of it and they have a blast, but they're just too cool, or they're too weary, or they're too shy, or they're too insecure, right?
Right.
So there's that, once they're past that childhood stage, that comes in more, unless they're like a very shy kid.
Mm.
You know, that's different. But
Yeah.
a lot of kids, what I like with the middle school age is I could have a sixth grader that shows up that never showed up before, that comes right up to me to like tell me something about their day,
Yeah.
you know? And it's so cute and endearing. Like, okay, this is a conversation I'm in right now, even though there's 20 other kids throwing balls all around this gym.
Right.
And I'm responsible for all of them.
They don't care about the fact that you're in charge of these other 20 kids. They
No.
want to tell you about the new cat that they got.
Yes. It's very sweet. You don't have that as much with a high schooler, let's say, that doesn't know you.
Yeah.
And especially working in this school, there are some kids who I've connected with, maybe because I already knew them through youth group, which was kind of like this blessing.
Mm-hmm.
It was interesting because I temporarily worked at Cardinal Kung when I got my master's degree before I had a full-time job, and I did PE.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I met some of those kids, and then I was asked to do youth group, and I'm like, I can't do that. I don't have the time. Like, I'm not good at it. I don't know theology. But, you know, they really needed someone. So they
like what happens in the
they
church a lot.
won me
Hey,
over.
You're a warm body. We'll pay you.
Yeah. And that's like, okay. So I did it. And then I knew the kids from Kung. And then I went back to Kung. Never would have predicted this or expected this as a full-time job. And I knew the kids from youth group. It was like, do-do-do.
Yeah, it just kept rolling.
God was feeling it. But at the high school level, it's interesting because now I'm in my second year, like starting off the year from the start of the year. And there were kids who really did not interact with me much at all. And now they are. And so it took for some, like the whole year, for them to feel me out. What's she about?
Is she cool or is she going to be one of those like strict teachers? Or,
yeah. But of course I'm cool.
You're very cool.
Yeah. I mean, I'm funny. I think that's how I win them over.
Humor is huge.
Yeah.
Absolutely huge.
And just like my mannerisms. It's not like I'm telling jokes or anything. But yeah, so just seeing kids that are more open to me now, which is very nice.
That is a gift.
You know, and there is like this role that I play as a supporter of them, even though I'm not directly teaching them, let's say.
No, but like a word of encouragement could go such a huge, long way.
Yeah, or trying to just get them to do the right thing, which would be go back to study hall. You know, we encounter that a lot with where my desk is.
Sure.
Located in the building.
Yeah, but that's actually one of the great gifts, though, is that if they feel comfortable enough to leave a class to come hang out with you, that's a good thing. That's actually a very good thing
funny.
because it means that they have adults in their lives that they love and respect and care for, and that they know that you care for them.
Yeah. Well, kind of funny story. So today was a crazy day at school where there was a morning mass that I organized, which was wonderful. And then it was picture day and we had to do some setup for picture day. And then it was raining.
In the pouring rain.
Yeah. And we'd take photos outside, but got a tent. Thanks to my dad who brought it at 7:30 in the morning.
That's clutch.
And then we finished this part where we were using room dividers because we also do senior portraits in caps and gowns. And then I'm bringing back the room dividers that go all the way on the other end of the building. And then I stop in the bathroom for a moment. And it's hard to sometimes find time to use the bathroom in this school because there's only two and there's things happening constantly. And I hear out from outside the door, a kid is not where he's supposed to be. And he's looking for me.
Oh.
I'm like, what the heck? This has never happened before. Oh, I'm looking for Miss Doyle. Why is a kid looking for me right now at this end of the building?
That's
anyway. But it was just a unique thing where he had like this muscle cramp and was looking for a tennis ball and thought I could get him a tennis ball. I'm like, then I saw him in the hallway. I'm like, it should really be a lacrosse ball. And no, I'm not going to go back down and get you one. Yeah. But anyway, that was kind of funny.
Yeah.
To be sought out and like hear it.
So when you're doing youth ministry, though, like what are some of the techniques or some of the things that you have found to be effective and what have you found not to be effective?
Sure. So for our middle school group, we've really made it about games and prayer, I would say, because we meet for an hour and a half. Is that how long your meetings are?
Ours are 2 hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I really had a challenge fitting everything in an hour and a half because we would start with a game and then some kind of formation or activity and then prayer time. And it was just always really tough.
Yeah.
Or I'd be stuck in the, we should really end the game, but now the game is tied, and like the kids are so excited about it.
Fun.
I mean, that is so much part of what I'm doing with the youth group and at school. Like I want them to get the joy of the game.
Yeah.
Even though like the bell's about to ring, I'm like, all right, guys, but anyway, so, would let them play because they're having fun and they're interacting. And sometimes the priests play as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then just because of this wonderful group of girls too, I mean, there's sporty boys and sporty girls, but also girls that are just really good friends. I realized they were having fun no matter what we did because they
Yeah.
just enjoy being together. So we give them games or activities, and then there's some kind of a faith component.
Hmm.
That's really more the model now. I
Yeah.
mean, sometimes there might be a talk or something, or we do all three, but it just gets really tight. And then the prayer time gets diminished. But in our group of middle school kids, we have a lot who are really seeking like time with Jesus and confession.
Mm.
So if I have to cut that short, they're going to be upset. I mean, really, like,
Yeah.
because I get asked all the time, will there be confession? I mean,
I've been amazed. Every youth group we have confessions, and the line is always
yeah, they
much
all
longer
tend to
than.
go.
Yeah, I mean, we always get 7, 8, 9, 10 kids,
Yeah,
which is a beautiful thing.
yes, it's great. So that's how we've, modeled middle school. It's light, it's fun. They interact with the priest, they play games, and we try to do something
Yeah.
with prayer. With the high school, it's tough for us in Stanford because we're multi-parish. I've, presented the youth group on Sunday after Mass. I've gone to like back to school night. I mean, it's technically for a middle school, but um, we've put the word out. I've gone to confirmation class,
Mm.
retreat day. And
Oh
I
wow.
remember it was 40 kids and one was coming to my youth group.
Yeah.
So we have a big problem of the parents that are just doing the minimum.
Well, I will say that's been a difference that I've seen over the 20 years I've done youth ministry. At the beginning, kids would be dragged by their parents. Now I'm seeing the other way around that kids are coming and dragging their parents with them because parents don't value it anymore because partly because it's too busy, partly because they never went to youth group as a kid themselves.
Or they've fallen off, right?
They've fallen off the practice of faith. But even
Yeah,
even like families that come to mass every week, they're like, well, I go to mass every week. Why is
I
this
know.
extra youth thing like we don't need it?
And they're prioritizing, most likely, I would say, sports, right? My kid's in hockey and soccer, and
So the
the
question
sports
is,
schedule is more important.
do we need youth ministry in the church? That's kind of a big question, right? Because I mean, in a perfect world, right, the parents should be the primary educators of their kids in the ways of faith. So if parents are evangelizing and parents are reforming, and you're coming to mass as a family, and maybe supplementing it with like a retreat like Camp Veritas or Catholic Family Land or something like that, then do you really need parish-based youth ministry?
Well, most people have never heard of Catholic Family Land.
Yes, you should all go.
Yeah.
It sounds cringy, but it's
Most
not.
people are
It's not
not,
cringy at all. It's great.
they are not at that level, right?
Right.
It seems like most are going to church when they can, not even necessarily every Sunday, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
And they probably don't even know how detrimental that is. So, yeah, I think it's needed. And I also love, like I was saying, the interaction of the priests and the kids.
That is
They
a big
don't
plus.
always participate, but even we did kickball and, the priest joins in. Like, it's fun.
Yeah.
Like, they get to play with him. And I just think that time with the priests in an informal setting is very valuable.
Yeah. Hmm.
The parents aren't around. It's not the shuffle out of mass, right?
Hmm.
So,
Do you have a good
yeah.
core team of other adults that not only
Well,
help but mentor?
I did, but one is leaving for another youth group. I'm like,
Oh no!
yeah.
Shoot.
And then another, I think, is saying work is too much.
Mm,
So my core team has turned over now a few times.
yeah, and that's I think one benefit to having an actual youth group, in that you can have if you have good adults who can mentor the kids,
Mm-hmm.
because they're not going to remember the formation programs, they're not going to remember the games. I mean, they'll remember how much fun they were, but what they're really going to remember, I think, is the relationships that they've formed with the adults who are there to love them. I mean, there's really no other reason for an adult to be there. They're not being paid, right? And the kids kind of know that. And I mean, I remember being a teenager, and it was the coolest thing when an adult would initiate a conversation with me. It didn't happen very often.
Hmm.
And I don't know if you remember, but I was always very honored that an adult would consider me worth talking to.
I was probably too shy.
Really?
Yeah. I was very timid. It was like my dad pushing me, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I guess
make
most
eye contact, say hello, but I was so shy. That was very hard.
most interactions between adults and kids that I've observed is usually correcting the kids for something,
Mm.
or a very formal relationship like teacher-student, right? Very rarely will you have an adult actually just say, "Hey, how was your day?"
True.
And that can make all the difference, right? for someone who you respect and like to now know your name and know that
Mm.
you play soccer and like that. I think the Protestants do it right in a lot of ways. And I was good friends with the guy who ran Young Life in Stanford. I don't know if you know what Young Life is.
Yeah, I've heard of
It's
it.
the big
I'm aware of
Protestant
it.
youth ministry. It's like
Yeah.
worldwide. It's huge, and it's really a great. I think a pretty good model in a lot of respects. And one of the things that they do that we as Catholics, partly because of youth protection, don't do, but also partly because we just never got on board with it, is um, like they make a point to go to the kids' sports games
Mm.
at a public high school, which is remarkable, right? Here's like these people who are not being paid, just volunteer court team members who are taking off work early or whatever, rearranging their schedules to come to a Saturday soccer game for a group of high schoolers
Mm-hmm.
because there's no other reason except like they love them. And they call that contact work, which is just like you're not talking about Jesus, you're just building a mentoring relationship
Yeah.
that's committed, and I think that's what really matters. I mean, did
Interesting.
you have mentors when you were a kid? Maybe not religious mentors, but did you have a coach you
Yeah.
took
So
interest
I
in?
was always in sports every season. So I always had a coach or two, right? Head
Mm,
coach, assistant coach. And those were the people who there was a few that I definitely bonded with,
mm,
stronger than others. And I remember my sophomore year basketball coach. He worked with like mentally disabled students in Greenwich High School.
oh
So I
wow.
never saw him during the day. There was no reason to, but I would go to his office and talk to him,
Mm. And
But I
that's
mean, but
huge to
our
have that.
relationship was built because I played on his team.
Yeah.
I didn't have any of these outside adults like ever. I mean, I did dance
But that's
growing up. I did sports.
but that's the thing is that you need a context for a
Yeah.
relationship, right?
I
So
didn't have
youth
a
group is
youth
a
group.
context for mentoring relationships to be formed. For me, it was Boy Scouts. I really looked up to the scoutmaster who was there for the most of my time. His name's Mr. Long,
Aw.
and he was a man of great integrity. I think maybe had a high school diploma and that was it. But you knew he was a man of honor. He was a man of his word. He's a man of sacrifice.
Yeah.
And I was senior patrol leader for like 4 terms, so like we worked together rather closely. And what struck me about him is that he treated me sometimes like a peer, not in a bad way, but in the sense that like if I had an idea, he wouldn't shoot it down because oh you're 15, you know nothing.
Right.
It would be like oh that's really interesting. Let's see how we can work that out, or let's see
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And he would actually give me like real leadership. He's like all right, we need to do X, Y, and Z to prepare for this trip. Go to it.
Awesome.
And I was like wow that's really cool. So I think that can be, and that's really, I think, the only really necessary thing that is why we need parish youth ministry.
Yeah. I mean, if kids aren't getting it from their teachers, if they're not in sports or music or dance or drama or something, art, I don't know.
But
They definitely need
even if they are getting it from there, they're
folks.
not getting it from a Christian context. Have
True.
a Catholic
True.
adult who loves you, because then you can have those deep conversations when they're like
About the faith.
about the faith
Yeah,
and questions
especially
of
if your
life.
parents aren't particularly faithful.
But even if they are, I mean, my parents were phenomenal and great Catholics, still are, but I still needed others. And I think all teens get to the point where your parents are insufficient. No offense to parents, right?
Yeah. That was not part of my upbringing at all. So I
No,
had my religious ed teachers,
but I wonder how
but it was somebody's mom and dad, and we
yeah,
just saw each other for class,
yeah, no
That was
mentoring
it.
outside of that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I wonder how how your faith life would have been different.
totally.
If
It
you
certainly would have
had
helped
that.
me in college
Mm,
and young adulthood.
yeah,
Because I had that moment, I've shared this before, but am I going to continue going to mass on Sundays? And I didn't know at that time. I wasn't formed enough to know that I needed to be there.
yeah.
So there were some weeks that I missed. Now I continued to go, and I did come to a point where I'm like, no, I'm never going to miss,
Good. That's a great
But
point. I mean, it's
it would have been better if someone had formed me. I mean, I don't want to knock my parents either because they raised me to go every Sunday.
yeah,
So I knew that, but you still question it,
right.
right?
At a certain parent's
And no one else is going.
right. At a
At
certain
least none of my dorm friends. Like I had no Catholic friends in college,
really.
which I can't believe either.
So when you went to mass in college, I'm just curious. When you went to mass in college, like, were there other Catholic events happening there, or you didn't even?
All I ever knew of was a like kickoff barbecue cornhole, which I went to once. Like maybe the other years I couldn't go because of Ultimate or something.
Mm.
But it was one of those not that many people. The people that are there are like kind of awkward, and I'm not gonna be friends with them.
Okay.
And then there was a Sunday night pasta dinner. So my routine became the 7 p.m. Sunday mass because I'd be in the architecture building pretty much all day,
Hmm.
at least all the afternoon. And the Newman Center was very close to the architecture building. So it was convenient, very nice, very
Free.
peaceful. It was $2
Oh,
for dinner.
$2.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I didn't know anyone. And I
So
would go and just sit at a table and chat. It'd be friendly, but it never went beyond that.
really interesting.
Yeah, I don't know why.
You never felt like,
I never
I
made
really
a friend
want to get
there.
to know these people.
It wasn't that long of an encounter. I don't know. And if there was just a lot of turnover. I mean, our Newman Center, it was all like a regular chair. It wasn't pews.
Mm.
It was filled every mass with young people and a lot of good-looking men too, right? Good-looking young men. But I never
You should have taken
interacted with
advantage.
any
What is
of
wrong
them.
with you?
It just
Good-looking young
didn't-
Catholic men.
Yeah, it didn't happen.
Mm.
I don't know why. Yeah,
Perhaps
strange.
God was saving you for another good-looking Catholic man. Who knows?
Who knows?
Who knows what God's plan is?
But no, yeah. Anyway, so certainly lots of young people there. I did go to stuff, but I didn't have a Catholic community.
Mm.
My dorm friends, nobody was Catholic. My Frisbee friends,
Yeah.
nobody was practicing. So you kind of, I mean, and this does happen in friendship circles. You kind of adopt the lifestyle of the people that you're with,
Yeah.
or you think it becomes acceptable, even though I was raised differently, right? I did question at least, Sunday mass.
Yeah.
Fortunately, came back.
But I think that hitting on community is another good element of youth group. That a good youth group forms a real community.
Yeah.
And it's hard. That is the hardest thing to do. I could put on a great event, but to form a community is something that
And
takes.
that lasts.
Yeah, it lasts.
Yeah. So we are fortunate. Our middle school group, I think they did bond, even though some go to different schools and different parishes. And so now I think I'm going to be able to build that community into the high school.
Mm.
Whereas when I took it on, it was kids from Kung who came because of you, right? Because they love you. And there weren't many kids from other schools.
Not too many. No.
And then we've had some, but at least in one case, there were so many Kung kids. And then it was a Stanford High kid who I think is more shy and reserved. And she was totally overwhelmed by all
Yeah.
these other kids that knew each other.
That's the thing. That's why I never went to my youth group growing up myself, in that I was homeschooled and everybody else was from Linganore or Urbana, the two public schools in the area, and they were cliquey. And I don't blame them for being cliquey, right? I mean, you go to the youth group to hang out with your friends, fine, no big deal.
Yeah.
But I was also going to the youth group for a different reason. I was going because I really was hungry for Christ, even as a teenager, and I really wanted to know more about my faith, and they didn't really seem to care about that element.
Right.
So the conversation stayed super shallow, and it was also kind of like there was a lot of hypocrisy in the kids that came to youth group because everyone knew they were all like sleeping around and
In high school?
and drinking. Yeah, I
They
mean, like,
knew that?
oh yeah, oh everyone knew.
I think I was
Everyone
like
knew.
just
It
naive
was-
and wasn't aware of that in high school.
Seriously?
Seriously.
Oh yeah, it happens. It happens. Yeah,
No.
it happens.
That would have been like so shocking to me.
Really?
That was like
I'm
totally
shocked that you're
not
shocked.
on my radar
Wow.
at all.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. I mean, God has preserved you from that, perhaps. But
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, no. So I mean, everybody knew that, and I was kind of like, these guys are not really my vibe, So it wasn't really till I started going to these retreats that were run by the Legionaries of Christ, and it was for homeschool boys, and so I met other guys who were kind of more on my wavelength, and particularly once I started going on their overnight retreats. So they would do a day retreat every month and an overnight retreat every month, and I always did the day retreats and never did the overnight retreats. And then finally I started going overnight, and I was like, wow, these guys are really cool to hang out with. Like, we played sports, and that's how you bond, is really just like a length of time and just doing life together. So that's a hard thing about most parish youth groups, is that you have 2 hours, and that's hard to form a community with 2 hours twice a month.
It's really
you
hard.
need
The
something-
schedule is very hard. That's been my biggest challenge at the high school level because we did have kids coming.
Yeah.
And then rowing season started, swimming.
Right.
So
Different
I've spent
sports
so
and
much
this and
time
that.
thinking about what day should we do? Should we switch a different day? Should it be Sunday afternoon? We're actually going to try that.
Okay.
Sundays from 2 to 4. And I'm hoping people will see it as a homework break, but then they can still have dinner with their family.
Okay.
Because it just seems like the Friday, there's too many activities, conflicts, and I get it. Parents, I mean, I myself, I'm usually exhausted by the time Friday comes around,
yeah, I
especially if I have
know.
a full
I
week.
know.
And so I will go
Yeah.
home and be like, I have a youth group tonight. and
Yeah,
like
right.
lay down for 30 minutes.
Right.
And then the kids give me energy. So that's good. But it's tiring. So yeah, I get it. If parents can't get their kids across town or whatever.
Well, that's one of the things, right? Is that it's so funny to me that I do find parents who are like, yeah, we need a youth group. We need a strong youth group. And that was when our bishop did a synod back in 2014. And he asked 3,000 people in the diocese, what do you think we need? And the number one thing was, we need good youth ministry and work with youth. Great. But if we need that, then parents have to prioritize that.
That's a
And
challenge.
that's a challenge, right? Because we're all busy. I get it. Like it's modern life and
Yeah.
we're way too busy.
And I think our culture, just back to the sports things, prioritizes their kid doing all that they can for sports to get a scholarship is
Yeah. Or just living through their
it's
kid and
much too high on their priority list.
oh my
Like
gosh, yes.
realistically, your kid is not getting a scholarship.
Yeah, no offense.
It's just those are the statistics.
Right.
Most kids
Right.
are not.
Less
I mean,
than 1%.
there's
something
various
like that.
options, and all of that, and it's become too like single sport focused. Kids used to play different sports. And you have seasons, and now it's extra coaches and seasons and all year, and it's not good for them.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you play sports. I played sports growing up, love sports, but I do think that's the number one way in which the evil one is driving souls away from Christ in today's world.
The number one way is sports.
I think, yes, I think because it's what is Satan knows that in America we're not going to be drawn to murder and like horrible, awful crimes, right? No one's going to do that, right? We're pretty good people. So all Satan can do in America is just distract us, just get us to prioritize other good things over the good thing.
I see.
And
I think it's robbing people of their human dignity through distractions that are video games, the metaverse, social media,
well, that's the other
smoking pot, like
that's the other piece.
all
of
this stuff.
Distraction, right? Is social media and your smartphones, right? Because in years past, if you're a farmer, think about being a farmer, right? You got 10 hours of work, 12 hours of work a day. You come home, you eat dinner, and then what? You read, maybe. You play some music. There's no TV. Yeah, so you're
you work
exhausted.
so hard.
But you have time to ponder. You have time to ask those deep questions about life, like why am I here on this earth? And
yeah,
I mean, especially like shepherds, they're watching sheep for 14 hours a day. That's boring, right? You have nothing to do. So what can you do? You can pray. That's how St. Patrick converted, was through being a shepherd and praying all day long. Because he said, I've got nothing else to do.
Right. And now it's all just entertainment.
And now it's just scroll, scroll, scroll.
In your hands.
So there's
constantly.
Even when you're in the bathroom, there's not a moment to ponder.
If you don't want to.
If you don't want to.
Bring your
you can
phone
distract yourself 24/7, right?
Yeah.
So that's what these kids are facing. And that's one of the more interesting challenges of today's modern world is trying to show that you actually do have a hunger for something more. And I think we know that. I think we know that, social media is just a quick pick-me-up. It's like a shot of caffeine rather than a solid meal. It's going to sustain you in joy. And I think people are starting to kind of wake up to that reality a little bit. But
for youth, it's very hard.
Yeah.
Right? They're so vulnerable at that age. They don't have, full brain development, as we know, right, to be able to control themselves. And now we're seeing all these other problems.
Right.
I think because of the social media influence.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
and then there's
thing.
also the element of, when we were kids, if something happened at school, it happened at school, and then you went home, and maybe you were on AIM messaging about it, Misty Muller 23, but that's about it.
You still remember your
yeah.
instant messenger handle. Wow.
Yeah. But now it's group texts, social media posts, putting it on the story, and they spread it, and it festers.
Yeah, you never get away from it. That's
exactly.
very true.
Especially like in all these public schools, if they have the phone in the school, because the school we work at, they don't have their phones, they could be recording it, or they're texting about it through the school day, right?
They could be. Yeah, thankfully, at least in Monroe, where I'm at right now, the high school and middle schools just outlawed smartphones in the classrooms.
Yeah. Which
are awesome.
Because they've been dealing with problems for years now.
They have, and they're seeing that for the first time, kids are actually turning to each other and talking to each other. And what a beautiful gift that is. And hopefully that's going to translate into kids who can come to a youth group and like have conversations and fit in and like seek community.
Yeah.
But that's going to take parents saying, look, your smartphone is not how you're going to spend your Friday night.
No, I know. And even when I first started, I had one girl that came and was on her phone the whole time. So I went over to her and said, like, you shouldn't be on your phone. But then she didn't come back. So then I was like, shoot,
No.
maybe I should have let her be on her phone because I didn't know her. She didn't know anyone.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's the reason why she didn't come or if, she just said, Mom, I don't want to go.
Well, I
And her
think she was
mom,
on her smartphone because her mom forced her to come. Because
yeah,
if you wanted to be there, you wouldn't be,
yeah,
scrolling.
yeah. It just definitely made me consider maybe I should let that go because at least
I
she's
don't know.
there.
I would say something.
Okay.
I would say
All
something.
right. So we think I did the right thing?
Yeah, I think
Even
you
though
did the
she
right
didn't
thing.
come back?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. But that's really the one. I mean, the rest of them, they all have their phones and then they're like playing kickball and the phone is flying out of the pocket, Let's
Right.
hope that doesn't break.
Right. But that I think is
funny.
an interesting thing. But when we were young, to hang out with our friends, we had to go somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Nowadays, you can hang out with your friends without leaving your room.
Yeah. Or they play the same game.
Yeah, and just
Right.
Playing together, and that I
Online.
think makes a huge difference. Is that youth group used to be, even if you weren't there for Jesus, you were there to hang out with your friends.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's like, well, I don't need that.
Yep.
But hopefully, people are waking up to the reality that real personal interaction matters.
Yeah. And I think adult to kid personal interaction really matters. I remember you saying, on a prior episode, how a lot of adults are afraid of kids, like afraid to interact.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think blessed. That's not something I've ever struggled with. It's like I've maintained my childhood side of me in a sense, right? That
Yeah.
so like there's not. I don't know. Like I don't really feel there's any kind of distance or barrier. Obviously, I know they're a kid, but I can relate and interact with them and joke with them and have fun with them. But yeah, apparently that's, I guess, common. But I think it's important for the kids and for the adults that adults are able to interact with kids. And
Yeah.
I think most maybe struggle. Like you have to understand this is a child, right? So when they do something that doesn't make sense,
Yeah.
what were you thinking?
You're not a mini adult.
Right.
Yeah,
What were you thinking? That's not the right approach because their brain doesn't work the way that yours does. But trying to understand them, I don't know, ask them questions, be understanding, right, is important. But to be able to be silly, playful, I mean,
right.
I think one of the great blessings of working with kids is they're hilarious.
They're so funny.
They're so funny.
is
And
my
what they do and
entertainment
say is
every day.
so unpredictable.
Yes.
And it is hilarious. Like, really, they're just a joy. Even just how they act. Like, we have one sixth grader, and he's not super into sports, but he always wants to be on the team with the penny. And, like, he wraps it around his head. And one day he did it so perfectly. Like, it looked like it could have been, like, a woman's hat on his head. It looked hilarious. And then he's rolling around, like, on the ground like that. Like, it was so funny. And he has no idea how funny that is, right?
It is exactly, and you have to have that attitude of like that's really funny because it is. I remember one student in high school at Cardinal Kung. We were in scripture class together. We were talking about something in the 1970s, and he was like, "Oh, that was when you were a kid, right?" And I was like, "No, dude, that was like 15 years before I was born." He's like, "Yeah, I guess if you were born in the 70s, that would make you 100." I'm like, do the math, buddy. No, 70s is not 100. It's 50.
Oh, goodness.
I
Yeah.
just had to laugh at that kid. Like,
Yeah.
goofy.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the joy of youth ministry, right? Is that
Totally.
you can
There's a
see
lot of joy.
there's a great line from the Psalms that talks about, Lord, you've restored the joy of my youth.
Mm.
And there is a joy that young people bring, an enthusiasm they bring to the faith. They're willing to go all in sometimes, and even all in hardcore.
Yeah. And just to see their excitement. I mean, in youth ministry, for me, a lot of it's the games when they really like playing the games. But one thing that we do is Saint Trivia.
Mm.
Saint Bingo. But it's not just, Saint Damien.
Right.
It'll be a little trivia question
Right, so you're
to
like,
get them.
the saint
And then
who
their hands,
worked
right? Their
Mhm.
hands shoot up and they're so excited to answer. And then I throw candy at them.
Yeah.
And they love it. So that
And
eagerness for the faith, too.
And so excited for prayer. I'll tell you, adoration is totally reaching the hearts of young people. And that's such a gift. We have one particular young person who, I always tell the kids, sit wherever you want in the church. And so this one kid goes right up to the sanctuary and kneels right on the step.
I
to
love
be
seeing that,
face to face
too.
with the Eucharist.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just awesome
It's
to
very
see.
touching. We have it
their
too
love for
in
the
our group.
Eucharist.
A few kids that do it.
Yeah, so it's great. It's great. But I think it is important, definitely. And I think, keep up the good work for yourself, and just want to challenge all of our listeners, because it is an important ministry in the life of the church.
And it needs your help.
It does need
and
your help.
support,
It needs your prayer,
and your time
needs
if
your
you've got
financial
it to give.
support. Yeah, and it needs, if you have kids, I would encourage you to drag them, maybe kicking and screaming, to youth ministry, especially if they're in middle school, because I think by the time they're 17, it's a little tougher to drag kicking and screaming.
Cool.
Too cool for school. But
6th grade.
But yes,
Great age.
start young, and they'll experience, at least if nothing else, they'll experience a good positive encounter with the church, and that could be a seed that's sown that really flowers in the years to come, hopefully in full discipleship. So
yeah.
Tune in next time to Veritas Catholic Network. You can find us on 1350 AM, 103.9 FM, now on YouTube and other social media platforms. Facebook, follow us on Facebook, and wherever else our producer Matt Speraza decides to put us. But tune in next time to Restless.